Cool. So, we are going to start with our solar plexus and adrenal points. So, solar plexus is the nerve bundle in the upper core, and when we palpate it from a reflexology standpoint, we are kind of checking into how the nervous system is doing. That's our goal here, is we're spending our first 30 seconds of the session tuning in to what's happening, feeling for the reflex of this nerve bundle to kind of just ask the body, hey, like, what's going on? Are you okay? Do you need help? And then also for the advanced students, just notice that the 3 fingers are on top, palpating the dorsal pedal pulse as well, which we will cover more in future lessons, which I'm writing the second book about pulse assessment in reflexology as well. Then we go into our adrenal reflex. So we palpate for that proximal head of the first metatarsal. Then we slide into the adrenal reflex in between the flexor tendon of the big toe and the plantar fascia. There will not be a test. You don't need to remember this. Just
Good.
just saying it to say it.
And will you walk us through it as we do it?
Yeah. Yeah. So the routine that I'm going to give you is exactly what I'm doing now. So you'll get to see it live, then you'll get to feel it because you'll be on the tables, and then we'll walk you through it step by step, really simple, really easy. Okay. And so we're on the adrenal reflex, palpating the solar plexus tells us a lot about the nervous system, and then palpating the adrenals tells us a little bit more about that slow and steady endocrine drip, like how are the hormones doing, whereas the nerves are a little bit more of an electrical instant feedback loop. The hormones tell us a little bit more about kind of what's been lingering in the system for a longer time, what chemicals are still rather flush. As I'm holding this point, her right leg is starting to activate, so we know that there's some sort of sciatic inflammation that's happening on that right side, and that's something that we'll probably look at towards the session as well. You can grab 2 towels for me.
When you feel a really strong, I'm sorry.
Either way.
When you find a really strong pulse in the adrenals, I mean, is that like an overactive
Yeah,
situation?
overactive.
I usually feel it tanked, but I had someone where it was just, and they weren't even, and
Right.
they were just,
Yeah.
and this was a different stress person we talked about earlier. So, and when I went back, it was better, but would you look at that as a fight or flight kind of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
Not just an imbalance of hormones.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you're feeling for a pulse?
So a pulse is just one of the things that we can feel for. Specifically on the dorsal pedal pulse, we are feeling for the cardiovascular pulse of the client. But when we palpate the reflexes, we're noticing tissue texture. So is the reflex hot? Is the reflex cold? Is the reflex dry? Is it moist? Is it actually spasmodic? Like, is the tissue like pulsing and spasming? When you hit that point, does it activate a pain response in the client? You know, what is it that you're feeling? But it goes a lot deeper than, you know, just pulse, no pulse. We're feeling for any kind of tissue state difference.
And pressure from 1 to 10, you'd say 3?
Yeah, 3 to 4.
The same with the top part, the dorsal?
The top
Is that
part
as
is a little bit
important?
different. You
Okay.
need to be a little bit more sensitive with that pulse.
Nice catch.
Good
No
reflexes
there, sister.
Now I have arrived.
There you
Kind of
go.
on here.
So when we do the technique as well, we're always starting, y'all are so crazy, created monsters. We always start on the right foot, because if we don't start on the right foot, the client explodes. And that's a proven fact, that's science.
Did we tell you we had someone spontaneously convulse while you were gone? We did.
We did.
Right after you
She
did it. Oh, you did it? She did.
I
She
did.
spontaneously.
I did.
Yeah.
I was doing her face, and then like I was as I was doing her right face, my right side, I started tearing and crying.
Yeah.
Not just
Oh.
just
She
Right.
had to leave.
crying. I had to leave to kind of
Yeah.
clean it all up because was just, my eye was just going.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay.
So we've had a spontaneously combusted situation.
I love it.
Okay, so I'm like, what is
Just
that?
sort of.
But yeah, it's a joke because when I talk about clients spontaneously combusting, I mean, like, you're not going to kill the person. I start on the right side because I start on the right side. If you start on the left, nothing bad is going to happen. It's just part of the routine. Yeah. So we're starting with our relaxation techniques. There are 6 of them, which we will go over in depth. But we start with sloppy Susans, then military train. Yeah, nothing against anybody named Susan.
Not like lazy Susan.
Oh, hi from a bunch of people and hugs from Germany.
Oh, Germany. Okay, then we go into Guten Tag. Yes. Then we go into a nice calf massage. You all right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'm like resisting the urge to look down and watch them.
Oh, yeah, I get it. I get it. You'll get worked on twice today. It'll be lovely. Okay. Then we're doing our push-pull, feeling how the metatarsals are moving. Or not. Very true. Yeah. But also feeling for the ankle, what's going on in the ankle. A little bit more hypermobility in this ankle. Get a little bit of grease on that heel. And we're pushing and twisting up that sciatic nerve.
Oh, Sally Kay said hi.
Hey, Sally! Love you, Sally.
Can you feel what's going on when you do that with your knuckles?
Yeah, so with here, the reason why we use the fist with this technique is because we're just warming up the tissue. We're doing a press and twist in order to soften all of that. And we're not actually in the reflexes yet. We're still warming things up.
Oh, and Josie from Fremantle said hi.
Aw, Josie. Okay. Then we get some lubrication onto the spinal reflex, and we're going to start by walking the spinal reflex. So yeah, if you need to move, go ahead and move. We are doing that thumb walking up the spine, which is from, right now we're walking lumbar into thoracic, and we stop. 3 to 4, yeah. Okay. Yep.
So you're not actually going on the curve of the foot at all? With
Nope,
that?
not yet.
Oh, okay.
All of that is the spinal?
Yep. Well, not the whole spine, but it's thoracic and lumbar. So the medial arch, everything from the big toe to the edge of the heel is spine. So we have head, neck at the neck of the toe. Then we have upper thoracic at the metatarsophalangeal joint. Then we have lower thoracic up to the proximal head of the 5th metatarsal. Then once the tarsals kick in, we get into the low back. And then at the actual plantar surface of the calcaneus, that ridge of the heel, we go into that sacral space. Okay. So after our spinal reflexes 3 times, then we go into each toe, massaging each toe 3 times.
Yeah, if you guys take Sally Kay's class, she does a really great job of mapping the spine along the actual tarsal bones. Like, she shows you exactly where she maps everything bone for bone.
So that was it? You addressed the spine?
Yep, we address the spine.
So you don't do on the edge of the foot?
We do, but later.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't want to walk over the bunion space because that's always going to be very sensitive. We address the big toe separately, and then we address the sacral space towards the end of the session. So what you'll notice about this routine is that we're covering A to Z. We're just doing it in a very systematic way so that you can take your time with the reflexes as you feel them. Yeah. And then, like, from a structural standpoint, one of the reasons why we save the heels for last is because it's the biggest and thickest. So we want the surrounding tissues to relax. We want everything else to come into alignment before we get into that really deep, powerful heel space. Now we're addressing the big toe.
That's the cervical where you
Cervical
are right
spine, yep. Which is not pleased, by the way.
Correct, sir.
You are. Okay. So I'm holding a point here in that cervical spine area, very close to the thyroid, but still in that neck tissue space. What happened was I was walking and I felt a textural difference in the tissues, which kind of pulled me in. And then I used that opportunity to just hold the point to see what the body wants me to do in that space, whether the body wants me to go deeper, whether it wants me to go lighter, whether it wants me to hit a particular angle to release tension from that pocket.
Yep. Yeah, hi from Leeds and hi from Tullamore, Ireland.
Hey, everybody.
Oh, it's Emma Moxie from Leeds.
Aww.
Aw.
So funny, half the people we already know and half the people you just see through correspondence. It's like, I know who you are, hi!
You've registered for the conference. You've registered for the course. Right.
Social media, man.
Right?
It's crazy.
It's
Yeah,
insane.
crazy.
Okay. So now we're walking up the big toe, which represents all of like the head of the body, whereas the neck of the toe represents the neck. The actual pad of each toe represents the physical headspace. So this is all brain, eye, sinus, jaw, teeth, etc. And we'll walk a second time just through there, because that's just gross. Okay. Then we're walking down the lateral side of that neck. That's, you would never tell a client. You would never tell a client
We
this.
had a whole conversation about gross as far as reading labs at the pregnancy center.
Yeah.
It's the second time we've gotten into gross this week, so.
Gotcha. I love it. Okay. So now that we've addressed the toes, then we're going to move to the dorsal surface. Dorsal surface is all of our lymphatic stuff, but also the reflexes are through and through. So the upper digestive translates to the upper digestive on the dorsal surface, lower digestive, but also very reproductive on the dorsal ankle. We're going to start with a nice metatarsal shake, get everything warmed up. Oh no, just kidding. I was wrong. Lymphatic first.
Oh, yeah. I knew that.
I know.
'Cause
I've
some
ruined the whole class. It's terrible.
Did it just for
We're gonna
me,
have to do it all
I
over
know.
again.
Everybody on Facebook will start a new video.
I'll be trolled for weeks.
You're always going towards this part?
I was like,
No.
Sam's gonna see
No.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when we look at going towards the heart, we're not particularly doing it for cardiovascular reasons. Here we are because we're trying to literally push lymph. But from a reflex perspective, again, we're focused on nerves, not on cardiovascular flow. Yeah. So we're not needing to, make sure that all, like I went up on the spine, which
Right.
is away from the heart.
I mean, for the lymph,
You know.
you have to go towards.
But yes, for the
Yes.
lymph, yeah. Which isn't really an impressive technique until you get somebody with swelling, and then you realize how powerful literally pumping that fluid is.
If they have pitted edema, is it contraindicated to
The massage textbooks would say yes.
Right.
I personally, like if they come in and they're not underneath a physician's care, and they haven't been, and it's regulated,
Right.
then I'll work on them.
Right.
But at the same time, like if they say I have chronic pitted edema and I'm on this medication for it and I'm seeing this doctor, this specialist, like we really need to reconsider like
Right.
the feet. Let's do the hands, let's do the face, let's do the ears. Let's not overwhelm the system.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's one of the beauties of doing the 4 schools of reflexology as opposed to just working on the feet, is if the feet are contraindicated, you can jump to another one
Right.
and still have the same benefit.
Right. Okay. Great.
And it's amazing how when one extremity is compromised, that it seems like you can go to the hands and see more and feel more in the other extremities too.
Right.
It makes them like more hypersensitive or hyper.
So if you had edema really bad, would you be better to work the other, like other areas?
It's case by case.
Okay.
Sometimes when a client comes in, they're coming in like for swelling.
Mhm.
Like I had a client yesterday who came in and she was swollen. That was part of her issues, but it wasn't to the point of pitted edema. We as reflexologists, we don't treat for anything. That's out of our scope of practice. So we need to be able to recognize it and be able to recognize, hey, this looks like a contraindication. Maybe let's choose another extremity.
Which
Okay.
is what Catherine and I share a client. And the first time that she came in to see me, she did have some pitting edema. And I just done really, really super light work with her, and it broke loose.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't take anything.
Yeah,
just
she was
like
super
the
sensitive.
the weight of my hand on her.
Right.
Right.
And it never came back that bad since that first time. I mean, it still comes back. She's got some serious emotional.
So I had a phone call, message left. I am still playing phone tag to get back with the person. But she left a message, told me, my feet turn purple. But my friend, her feet turn purple worse. So we'd like to both
Nice.
This was my
my
day
God.
yesterday. We'd like to both see you. Would reflexology help, and how much would that cost? Well, it depends on how purple you want your feet to be, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, we're going to have a conversation about, did you, are you seeing a doctor? What do you feel it's coming from? Is this a diagnosis that you're,
Right.
she's senior, circulatory,
Right.
like purple, and it gets purple back. I mean, I'm assuming you would just look at that going, let's get more information.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at with
Yeah,
it.
and that's part of the beauty of being a reflexologist is some clients don't know when they're in the middle of a health crisis.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the pleasure of identifying that and directing them to the proper authorities, like putting them in medical jail
Yeah.
and saying like, look, you need this checked out now. We can help you relax, but at the same time you're going from here to the hospital, please. So now after the ball of the foot, we are going to go into the digestive reflexes.
Hi from Devon. Hi from Canada.
Devon in Canada.
Oh, it's Susan Quayle in Devon.
Oh, Susan. Hey, baby. How you doing?
So now you're going across the foot as opposed to up and down.
So the technique specifically, what we're doing is we're walking from the fifth toe to the third toe. And the reason why we don't walk across the entire foot is because we're avoiding the plantar tendon. Yeah. But right now I've stopped over the gallbladder reflex because it needs to be attended to.
And you're just holding it?
Just holding it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, do you have like charts that will have like on loose paper or?
So we have these charts, and then we have digital charts which are on the website. If you send me an email, I can send you the packet that I give for the 4 schools of reflexology, which has the routines and basic maps.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do you feel it ease up like when you do regular massage,
Yeah.
and then you just let go, you less pressure?
So do you hold it until you feel it release?
When you find a point, your job is to hold that point and listen. Yeah, you are entering a conversation with that reflex, facial itch. Yeah? And then we move. And we'll talk about that in a second. But when we find a point, it's like the body is asking us to press here, but we don't necessarily know why, for how long, what pressure it wants. And so we address that point and we feel how the body is responding. Does it want us to go deeper? Does it want us to back off? Does it want us to go sideways? Does it want us to be there for 5 seconds or 45 seconds? We don't know. So we're listening, but then we're adjusting our technique as needed to the point.
I do that similarly because I do a lot of neuromuscular, so that's how what I do with a trigger point.
Right.
So is it similar
It
to
is
that?
very similar, except instead of focusing on the muscle, we're focusing on the nerve aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So we're feeling not just the physical tissue release. We're feeling for things like temperature, literal static electricity, sensations in your own body, but then also things like facial itching, stomach gurgling, breathing changes, and muscle twitches. So there are 4 things that we look for to indicate that the body has received point work, and that's when the client spontaneously itches the face, which sounds very weird, but it's super awesome because even when they itch the face, it doesn't stop itching because it's coming from the inside out. It's a neural impulse. It's a static.
So we're just
Which
staring at you to see if
scratch your
Right.
face.
which tells us that the body has received the feedback loop and is starting to kind of generate some electrical heat in that kind of cranial cavity.
Mhm.
But then also the stomach gurgling, because that's a parasympathetic response. That tells us that the body is relaxing, that it's moving the digestive stuff. Muscle twitches, because especially like if you've ever gone to sleep and just before you go to sleep, like the muscles kind of twitch, that's the body starting to discharge tension. Yeah. Another facial itch. So we're looking for stuff like that, and noticing, like, I'm in that exact same vertical zone of 4, and she just itched, you know, in 3 where I was, like, starting to decode the story that's happening.
And with the trigger point specifically, this is very similar to what Dr. Nimmo defined as washing out of the basal ganglia. Same neurological concept.
Okay.
Whatever he said.
That moment was brought to you by
I'm writing
I
a
don't know,
neurology
does-
course right now. I
Does
can't help myself.
washing out of the basal ganglia, does that require Tide? Like, what do you use on that? Is that like slow cycle?
Right.
Like,
Woolite, Delicates only.
Right.
Yeah.
How do we do that? But it's very, like, the way that I'll describe it to clients and students is we're clearing the reflexes.
So
Yeah.
we're doing across and up and down.
Across and up and down. Yep.
Whatever
And
it takes.
yeah, whatever it takes. But this is the exact same routine that I use on every single client. The only thing that's different is the point work that we do, which is client specific.
Okay.
You mean like pressure?
Not necessarily pressure, but the points, the individual places that we stop are based on what the client's body is kind of asking us to do. It's not like the client is coming in for back pain, so I know that I need to press here, here, here. It's, is there anything in the low back reflexes? No, move on. Is there anything in the head? No, move on. Is there anything, oh, yes, yes. Okay, so we stop here. You know, that's the kind of methodology that we use.
So that's why you do the whole routine,
Right.
because obviously, like when we're doing massages, people say this is where it's come. It is. We find it somewhere else most of the time.
Right.
That's the same basis here.
Exactly. Because we would never want to, and I was trained this way, if somebody comes in with diabetes, these are the reflexes that you work for diabetes, which is dangerous in terms of treatment protocol, but then also from a theory standpoint, what if it's coming from somewhere else? What if the body is asking you to press somewhere else? What if the body needs, you know, the hips to release? It's very case by case. So we want to make sure that we're listening to the body and not listening to the routine. But you need the routine to listen to the body.
Gotcha.
So it's that catch-22. The routine is just the path that we're walking through the park. We want to see every tree, every leaf, every bush, every exhibit, you know, or walking through a zoo, another itch. And we're and this is my mental process. Like every time that I go, I'm noticing what the client is doing. But if we skip a particular area, we don't know if that's where the tension actually was, if that was the one point that I needed to press to satisfy the body, you know, to relax during the session. So we make sure that we're hitting everywhere, we're touching each reflex, but we're making sure that, you know, we address the points that the body asks us to address as we find them as well.
How much time would you estimate that you spend on each foot? 30 minutes, you think?
Yeah, 30-30.
Do you time it or it just works out that way?
Yep, I time it.
Oh, you do?
Yep,
Okay.
I have a little digital clock, but I've gotten to the point now where I know.
Yeah, and tell 'em.
But yeah, I have a clock that I look at, and it's normally 30-30.
Oh, okay. What if one foot needs more time than 30 minutes?
I mean, you could always do that.
Yeah.
Again, unless the client writes on their health history form that they're prone to spontaneous combustion, because then all bets are off. Okay. Now we're going into, this is the end of our routine, so we're going into that Achilles and heel space. We're about to unwind the ankle as well. This is the heavy work. When we talk about postural stuff, when we talk about plantar fasciitis, when we talk about all of the things that could go wrong when the ankle is disjointed, we save this bit for last.
Hi from Antalya, Turkey. Darlington, UK. And then there was a lady in Northeast Texas that was talking about heel spurs, Achilles tendonitis, and arch pain.
Gotcha.
But I didn't get the whole comment before it flipped by.
Yeah, so when we see a stacked profile like that, it's because the sciatic nerve is completely compromised. Yoga and cardiovascular activity. We need to flush out the nerves, another head itch, and we need to stretch the lower body. But also, it's all sense of security and moving forward stuff. So that person really needs to slow down. No, not you. No, she's already slowing down perfectly fine. She's got some crazy calluses happening.
What if they only want you to work on the foot itself and not the other foot? Is that okay?
That is not okay. I'm not sure why a client would ask that. If a client comes in and they have a right foot issue, I would still work the left foot.
Right, to balance.
Right. It's not, and it's really, really interesting when a client does come in with a one-sided issue. I'll always start on the right, regardless of if it's a right or left issue. And as I'm working on the opposite foot of the side that's hurting, they'll feel it on the side that hurts because the body is intelligent. The body knows. It knows what we're asking it to do, and it will take those impulses exactly where it's needed.
And there have been studies of someone who broke a leg, but they worked on the opposite leg and they create healing.
I mean, the body knows. It's just, and that's part of the reflexology process is us understanding that we are helping, but we are not the cause of healing. The body is doing that for us.
And it's a great thing for aftercare instruction to explain to somebody, sometimes you need to treat more than just where you're feeling the pain. Like you need to be looking at your body as a whole, the mind, body, spirit connection, all that stuff, as opposed to my knee hurts right now.
Right.
Also, hello from Brisbane, Essex, and Saudi Arabia.
Oh, Saudi Arabia. Very nice. Okay, so now we're in the quad reflexes, the hip flexors, and there's a lot of tension in through here.
Yeah, and that's the only place on my foot that's been tender.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah.
So we're addressing that. But then also, you remember at the beginning of the session how I noticed the leg twitch and the sciatic nerve I knew was going to be an issue? Now we know. Yep. But I wouldn't know if I hadn't taken the time to go into the cuboid notch, which has our leg reflexes. So that's what we're talking about.
I have had the sciatic issue.
Perfect.
I don't call it sciatica, but sciatic
Right.
issue, knee pain, and bad restless leg on the right.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I do this for a living.
You should.
Right.
You're so good at it.
But it looks like magic, but as I talk about it's literal common sense.
Right.
Once you know the map, any therapist would be able to identify that this area is tight. It is literally like a rubber band times 10, just like you could pluck the quad reflex on this cuboid notch. It's just so tight. Any of you would be able to be like, huh, that's weird, there's something wrong here, and then the client thinks you're a wizard.
Yeah,
So it's about knowing your map, doing the routine, and then realizing how interconnected the body actually is.
The yellow balm that he's using is natural shea butter. It's unbleached. And then hi from South Africa and Ireland.
Hey, South Africa and Ireland.
And Dubai.
And Dubai. Can't wait to go to Ireland for the national conference in Portrush. That's going to be amazing. Very excited for that in September.
When are you going to Ireland?
September. So third weekend of September, I'll be doing a class in Enniskillen. Then the fourth weekend is going to be the conference in Portrush, and then I'm doing a 2-day class in Dublin. Okay.
Hi, Bev. Bev and
Oh,
Bev!
Bev!
And then Our Lady from Texas basically said you are spot on with the heel spurs and Achilles tendonitis.
Perfect.
You just called all of her issues.
It's all when we see markers like that stack in one zone, and that heel representing the sciatic nerve, of course it's all lower body stuff. The body just is trying to get your attention through multiple symptoms.
I'm
So if you don't pay attention to the first one, it's
And
gonna...
again, what did you say that it was?
So it's all sciatic, knee, leg stuff. We just need to do cardiovascular movement and stretching for that. But then also internally recognize that the body is manifesting stress due to sense of security and moving forward issues.
What if somebody's feet are really calloused and they're really hard? Obviously, you using more pressure.
No.
No?
No.
Oh.
Because what is the callus protecting?
Something.
Sensitivity. So hard tissue, physically, represents hard tissue in the reflex. So when we're seeing calluses around the heel, that's restricted fascia in that reflex area for the lower body. But then also internally, that's hypersensitivity that the body has coated in protective defensive lining.
What about like cracked heels or cracked fingers?
Yeah, so cracked heels are really fun because it's literally cracks in the foundation. Cracks and lines represent weakness in the reflexes, so weakness in the lower body specifically. In the fingers, it would be where the fingers are cracked. Which finger is cracked is also really significant from a vertical zone perspective. But it's the same thing. It would indicate a weakness, a fissuring, a separation of those tissues. Yeah, it's once you start to get the hang of it, it's really quite interesting. Like separation means separation. Calluses mean kind of calluses. Growths mean growths. Heat means heat. Cold means cold. Wet means wet. You just need to understand that it's a direct relationship between the reflex itself and the corresponding area.
So are you now going back through the same beginning?
Yep. Same reflexes at the beginning. And part of that is the neurological component of why we do it in this order, in this way, is we're starting with the same techniques and we're ending with the same techniques to give the body a sense of familiarity. We're saying, you remember this, right? Yeah? Okay, we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. There are no surprises here. And that's part of the reason why this routine is so effective, I think personally, is because, especially because I see a lot of clients who have severe trauma, who are on the spectrum, who have neurological issues that are very deep-seated in the emotional space. I tend to work very well with those clients. A technique like this tends to be very soothing to the nervous system because it's so non-threatening. But there's nothing that we would do differently for trauma, whoever was thinking that. It's the same routine. The routine itself is a set of movements that I've kind of perfected over time, and the body, like, when something didn't work the way that I wanted it to, I threw it out of the routine. So everything that I'm teaching you now is what I found to be the most receptive to the process of healing for the clients. So if you just kind of follow this protocol, it's again, like, I'm not teaching you anything different from what I would do with clients all day, every day. This is the same routine that I use because it just works over and over again. And this is also the reason why I feel totally confident, like, putting it on YouTube. It's like, do it. Try it. Have it. You know, if it works. I spoke at the FSMTA convention, the Florida State Massage Therapy Association convention in Orlando, and one of the students that came up to me said they worked on a client who booked for reflexology, but they had no reflexology training. And so that night they looked at one of my videos and started learning the technique, and they did the session, and the client rebooked for reflexology. And I was like, yeah, like, that's it. And then we had the conversation. I'm like, so the modality has chosen you to become one of us. And that was, she thought that was funny, but, like, that's how you know that a technique works, is somebody's able to, like, tell you about it, explain it to you step by step, you try it. If it doesn't work for you, don't do it. But it's worked for me, so something's got to be right.
Who was these reflexologists that created it? The original, do you know?
So the original, there's debate about that. Reflexology has been found in every culture. People cite it back to ancient Egypt. People try to use the Asian traditional Chinese medicine route to justify it. Reflexology, as we know it from a Western perspective, has its roots in zone therapy, which was created in the early 1900s by Dr. William Fitzgerald, which was then populated by Joe Shelby Riley, which was then refined by Eunice Ingham, who is known as the mother of reflexology. So that's the lineage that I personally associate with because I'm trained in the Ingham method. That was my first school that I learned with before I realized that reflexology shouldn't be done that way. Oops.
You just rolled over.
And but I mean, it's just a refinement of the practice. So when we look at where reflexology came from, there are different styles. Like you'll find the more traditional Chinese medicine-oriented reflexologists are trained in deeper pressure. They're literally pushing energy through the channels, often with tools and knuckles, which is not invalid according to their theory, but it just so happens that it clashes with our understanding of how the nervous system works. So there are many different forms, many different applications. We all tend to call it reflexology, but the modern revival of reflexology that we know is going to be early 1900s.
But the one thing that doesn't change, I'm sorry to interrupt you, is the mapping, correct? That is, or is there a change in the mapping?
It depends on who you talk to. Okay. What's really funny to me is that Eunice Ingham is known for populating the foot map, where she actually mapped the organs, the Western anatomy, onto the extremity. But that's recent, and yet you find reflexology maps over in Asia that use that organ system, which is a Western anatomy, not a TCM. So it's like it's been appropriated, it's been blended, and a lot of that is because because of cultural revolutions and history and how cultures have blended, and now we don't have documentation that supports whether or not reflexology originated in acupuncture theory. We know that the feet, the ears, the hands, the face have always been revered as microcosms, but where that actually started, we don't know because so many places have come to that conclusion at once. But the modern refinement of the Western anatomy on the extremities is recent.
Alex Clark from Temple Academy.
Alex!
Yeah, she said hi.
Hi, Alex.
I'll see you in October, Alex. And then we had a couple of questions. One, a lady has a client who has callousing on her pelvic, knee, and hip reflexes, and she keeps trying to chisel it off, and the therapist is trying to coach her out of that. Any advice on that one?
Yeah, so physically we need to treat the reflexes from the outside in and the inside out. So specifically, like working those reflexes to soften through gentle point work and asking the body to release that tension, but then also understanding that she needs to be doing her own self-care. And just like we talked about with the heel spurs and the plantar fasciitis and stuff, the idea that the lower body needs to be stretched, it needs to be opened. If she wanted to do that through a massage, that's great, but I'd really like her to investigate some sort of yoga or awareness-based movement practice in order to decompress those lower body reflexes.
And then Allison Hewitt, I noticed that you work heel to toe on the spine. Do you work the other way, and if not, why?
I do not work the other way because, again, threat of spontaneous combustion. Clients are very flammable, and I wouldn't want to do anything to spark that fire. Not really. That's a joke. Please have a sense of humor. I don't work that way because physically it's very hard on the wrist. So when we're working like this, our wrist is in alignment. But when we're working like this, do you see what I did? So when we work up, we're more proper. When we work down, we are literally pinching off that nerve channel, which is dangerous for us as the practitioner. And I forgot where I was. Was I on the toe? Sorry. Yes. Okay.
Work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you're doing a technique because somebody has always done that technique and that's the technique that you've been taught to do, it's every right of yours to question it. And that's really one of the reasons why I teach this work now, is because I did the wrong stuff for so long, is because I hurt my hands over and over and over again, and I had to wonder, is there a better way to do this? I get so many massage therapists coming into these classes who say, you know, I've tried reflexology before, but the way that I learned it is not sustainable. Like, I can't exert that amount of pressure. It's too hard on my hands. And the response that I have to that is, you just learned the wrong way.
Were you working the dorsal part of the foot just now with your
Yeah, so right now I'm, my left hand is on the C7, C6 reflex on the lateral side of the neck of the big toe. I'm also dual holding a point, so I have my right middle and fourth finger on her hip reflex on the posterior surface of the lateral malleolus. Facial itch.
And the pressure you said would be considerably less on the dorsal?
Yeah.
2?
1,
2?
Yeah, 2. Ish, give or take.
So where you have your left hand under like the ball of the foot on
Yeah.
the big toe.
It's just for support and leverage.
Years and years, I'll be walking or sitting, and it'll feel like somebody's stabbing me under there, and then I'll get the worst pain in this region.
Interesting.
And nobody can explain it. No
Yeah.
chiropractor, no massage therapist, but it'll stop me dead in my tracks.
Wow. So when we look at the pain being in the reproductive pelvic space, that's one interpretation. But then also when we look at the pain in that ball of the foot area being cardiovascular, because it's right over the heart reflex, we would immediately like associate reflexology-wise cardiovascular pain. But also it's the emotional area of the foot. So it would be kind of a shot to the heart.
Gotcha.
And you are too late. You give love a bad name. It is. Yeah. I think I already did this, but we're.
Thank you, John Bon Jovi, for that.
Yeah. Okay. So, and so I got distracted by the question. I think I did the dorsal surface already. Not really too sure about it, but does the client care?
No.
No. Client just doesn't want you to stop. So it's all part of the routine. They don't know, so you just keep going. That's
And
it.
here's a secret. I don't like having my feet touched.
Wow.
So the fact that I'm able to tolerate
She
this
loved
is
it
a
that you
good
called
thing,
on
yeah.
her.
Yeah.
She has hoofs.
Exactly.
She doesn't like her feet
Hoofs.
touched.
I don't go for manicures because they try to touch my feet.
Right.
Weird. Don't like it.
And that's
Pedicures.
So many
an
people like
excellent
that.
testimonial, and thank you for sharing that. Because I have so many clients that come in against their will sometimes because friends and family have given them gift certificates. And I always give them the out. I always say, hey, we're not just a foot place. We can work the other extremities. We also have massage therapists on staff if you would prefer that type of modality. Whatever works for you. But we do recognize that reflexology isn't a foot massage. Reflexology stimulates the body in a very different way than a foot massage does. So we need to be aware that our process is going to be less irritating overall to people that have that sensitivity.
So for somebody who doesn't particularly care for massage, there's many of those.
Yeah.
This might be a different approach, definitely.
Very. Especially if facial itch, the body is like not wanting massage because it's been injured. This is a very easy modality because they're on the table, they don't need to flip around, but then also like especially in cases of trauma, in cases of insecurity, the client is fully clothed the whole time. They are in a safe space. I'm staying at a very neutral part of the body, although some people would argue that the feet are very, very sensitive as well. We're staying away from any sort of draping issue. We're staying away from the body feeling like it's compromised. So it is a very accessible modality. And even if somebody doesn't want their feet touched, we can go to the hands, we can do the face. It's not a modality that is locked into you have to get naked on the table. You have to have your butt worked on. It's not like that. We can change, we can adapt, especially in like a hospital setting. the feet are often one of the things that's not hooked up to different wires and sensors. So we get, we have that advantage to our modality.
So,
Yes.
I'm a part owner of a birth center.
Mhm.
Is this okay for pregnant women?
That is a great question. And Barbara Scott, with her book Reflexology for Fertility, would be more appropriate to answer that one. So you can always shoot her a message directly. But we agree on this topic that reflexology is safe for birth at all stages of pregnancy. I personally think that reflexology shines the most post-pregnancy, post-delivery, to clean the body of all excess hormones, to retonify the muscular and nerve channels, and to reset the body post-trauma, if you will. Even though birth is a lovely process and it can be so beautiful, it is often terrible and traumatizing.
Yes.
So when we look at the birthing process from conception to gestation of pregnancy, the only way that you would be able to hurt a body is if you hurt a client. Let me say that again. The only way that you would be able to hurt a pregnancy is if you are physically, sending pain signals through the client's channels. If the body wants to have a pregnancy, it's going to have a pregnancy. If the body does not want to have a pregnancy, there is no button that you could press to make that body have a pregnancy.
It's good that you said that because most people come in and they're like, you can't touch me feet. And I'm like,
Right.
who told you that?
That's the old
Yeah.
school.
It is.
Right.
It's in every massage textbook.
Yeah.
In massage school, they taught us that there's one point by the ankle.
Right.
Touch that, don't miscarry.
That's
So
it.
the medial,
Right.
the medial malleolus
Yes.
is the pelvic reflex. In women, it represents the uterus. In men, it represents the
Wait, say that
prostate.
again, Scott.
So the medial malleolus, so the inner ankle, represents that uterus prostate reflex. And in the beginning, I actually had clients coming to me for fertility. And I was literally jamming into that reflex because I was taught press button, fix issue, So the harder you work on that very sensitive reflex, and it is very sensitive, the better you will be, health-wise. And my clients weren't getting pregnant. And it wasn't because I was a bad practitioner. It was because I was trying to work with a invalid theory. My effort and intention was pure, but the body trumps me in all aspects. There's nothing I could do to inflict healing on the body. Yeah.
Since you mentioned that part, on females, such as chronic yeast infections,
Yeah.
did you do anything with that with the feet?
I mean, it's all about balance, but at the same time, because yeast grows from often nourishment issues, yeah, too much sugar in the diet, too much stress, too much sugar in the diet. Yeah, I mean, something about sugar, yeast and sugar, stop eating sugar. I mean, it's amazing how fast it clears up when you integrate some vegetables. And so the body, yeast is an opportunistic organism, just like everything else. So when the body is conditioned in order to grow, like a garden, weeds, it will grow the weeds. So from a reflexology perspective, there's no magic button that we can press in order to fight back the yeast. If the body does not have the strength that it needs, if it's being literally streamlined with the stuff that's growing the yeast, there's nothing that we could do from a reflexology perspective to fight that infection. But we can, from a foot reading perspective, identify where the infection is coming from and maybe work with a dietitian to refer out to talk about dietary coaching, understand what systems are being affected and why. Like, is it located in the bladder? Is it located in the gut? Is it located upper GI, lower GI? Where is it coming from, and how can we best work with lifestyle changes in order to kind of reacclimate?
Is there any places that you wouldn't touch that will just stay away from this? On the toes, I don't see you going on the sides of the toes.
No, I kind of am, like my sides of the face, but I'm not like working directly on the sides of the toes.
And it's you just because you don't want to, there's no reason.
They tend to be very sensitive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so a lot of my technique is about stimulating without causing pain. From a not working perspective, from a contraindication perspective, anything that is broken, bruised, or bleeding.
Or not swollen.
I mean, I'll work on swelling.
Okay.
but at the same time, again, if it is a true diagnosed condition, if they're underneath the physician's care, we need to be clear on that.
Somebody says that hurts, that's
Exactly. Pain is the ultimate contraindication. I am not going to work on something that is going to be like super painful to the touch. Gout is tricky business because I am an aggressive therapist when it comes to like flushing. So I mean, I'll work all around the gout, but I'm not in there like rotating the toe and trying to like flush out the acid crystals. Like that's not my bag.
Not your forte.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've done it, but I've done it to the point where like it's not helpful.
It doesn't work.
So we need to facilitate cardiovascular activity. Gout is often brought on by that big thing called stress.
Or alcohol.
Well, just big yes to all of it. Well, it's known as the king's disease for a reason, and it's often sugar, red meat, fat, and stress. The men and women that come in with gout that I see are often terrible diet-wise, terrible stress-wise, and the body is just literally bursting at the seams with inflammation. Combustion. They are combusting. So
What about cramping? Do you get people who cramp quite a bit when you're working on them?
No.
A lot of people's feet cramp.
It depends on kind of what they're coming in for. Like if they're coming in for sciatic issues and the cramp is a one-time thing, then that could be a release. But if it's repetitive throughout the entire session, that's probably a deficiency of some kind. That's probably a deeper nerve impingement of some kind. So we need to be very cautious in terms of where the cramping is coming from and why. Yeah. Also, what side?
Maybe.
What?
Lack of something in the diet.
Yeah, the diet, but then also like think of if they're in this position, which is fully supported and relaxed, why is the body feeling the need to do that? Yeah. 9 times out of 10, it's because the body is retaining fluid. It's become inactive and stagnant, and so the body needs to physically pump the fluid through spasm. I see that a lot. But then a lot of it is like fat and mineral deficiency too can cause that restlessness. So it's like in these feet specifically, we're seeing a lot of the deep lines that would indicate malnutrition. So we would look at, especially with this client, although we're seeing a lot of physical reasons for the sciatic nerve channels holding tension, we would want to discuss, like, are you working with somebody or a diet plan or something to be more regular in your caloric intake so that the body doesn't move into spasm as readily. So many different things.
It could be sports related as well.
Yeah, any kind of injury could produce it. And we're just doing multiple passes because it needs it. Physically, like starting to get very warm, which is interesting. Like me personally, as I'm. Yeah, I'm. What?
Maybe it's because he's hanging around you.
No, like I'm. Like I don't get warm, and I'm getting very hot.
My hands are on fire.
Yeah, I am physically like hot.
Scott,
He needs to dab your forehead.
Like all of it. Like somebody touch my forehead. Like I don't get.
Wow.
I don't get hot flashes, and I'm getting a hot flash.
Okay, so what can that be?
So when we look at the sympathetic response in a client, and this is something that a lot of body workers are like, oh, you must protect yourself from your client's energies. I'm like, get over yourself. And our job as a therapist is to connect with our client, not take it on, but to connect in a way that is therapeutic. And sometimes that means feeling what your client is feeling. She had a hot flash, and I had a hot flash. She did not say that she was having a hot flash, but my body knew it. Yeah.
that's empathetic.
And
Right,
I have
it's
cancer
empathy.
on this side.
In the ovaries?
No, actually, triple negative breast cancer.
Okay.
So, so targeted radiation. And,
There you go.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out the whole hormonal thing right now.
Yeah, so...
I just think I don't want to say a bad word, but
Yeah.
old.
So you know,
Not
okay.
hormones.
Right.
It's crappy.
Yeah.
It's hot.
I got it. But where I was working specifically was over that ovarian reflex. And so again, like you heard me saying, it's weird because, you know, a couple extra passes here, and then I started getting really hot, and then she started getting really hot, and that's magic, right? So this is the kind of stuff that we look for during a session to say, okay, we're moving stuff around, we're allowing the body to be vocal, we're letting the body show us where it needs to be, and that instance alone would open up a major conversation. Are you seeing an endocrine specialist? You know, what is your plan moving forward with that? It allows us to be client advocates as opposed to just passive meat grinders.
Can you combine another modality such as Reiki along with your reflexology, or you strictly use just reflexology?
You totally can. The only thing with Reiki specifically is that Reiki happens whether you want it to or not. So it's kind of like redundant from that perspective. But like if you combined reflexology and massage, a lot of my students will use reflexology first to assess, and then we'll go and do spot treatments on the areas that they find need the most work.
Okay.
Yeah, that can be very effective, but then also to relax the body before deep tissue, or to relax the body before going into some sort of kind of focused work, or just, you know, general massage, focusing more on the extremities during a massage.
So is there a routine that is a smaller routine that you would
Yes,
do if
an
you're
abbreviated.
combining those two?
Yep. So when I do a half-hour routine, and that's on the YouTube channel as well, I'll do spine, toes, ball, upper, lower digestive, heel. I'll forego the dorsal surface, I'll forego the ankle, and I'll just work on I'll hit all the zones, but I won't get into the more complicated stuff.
Okay.
But what if you know that someone's coming in with reflexology problems? I mean, with sciatica.
Yeah. I mean, you could focus on there.
more?
Yeah, you could. It's just a suggestion. I want to clear all the zones,
Right.
but then, like, especially if a client is coming in with, like, hip issues, I'll take a second to, like, palpate that area post-session just to see, you know.
Sam, is your digestive feeling cold, or are you feeling more heat?
No, it's dry. Like, the digestive system is just depleted. The heat was weird. Like, her feet aren't hot.
That's why your shit's cold and you're trying to heat.
No.
That is dry.
Dry feels like dry.
The skin, you mean, feels dry?
Yeah, the skin and the reflexes
I'm
feel
like,
dry.
how are you getting down and feeling like that?
Yeah.
Now, can you tell if they're dehydrated a lot too? Because I notice when I do massages, I say, "Oh, you're dehydrated." Can you go by the feet just
You
alone?
could. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when we see lines like this, lines indicating weakness aren't always dehydration. There are also fatigue. There are also lack of healthy fats.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it's not just about liquid hydration. It's also about, like, are they eating enough water-filled foods? Because we don't just drink our water, we eat our water. But then also, are they oilated properly? Like, a lot of these lines, I see a lot in neurological conditions, because fat is required to coat the nerves for the myelin sheath. So when we see lines like this on somebody who has, like, MS, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, we know that there's a deficiency issue.
So I have like puffiness in my heel that I'm having an issue with. What would that be?
Fluid retention in the lower body.
And you're right. So I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and I refused to take the prescription.
Yeah.
So I'm working out how to get what I need, and then eating raw fruits a lot of times will set that off.
Yeah.
So that makes it tricky for getting fluid in your
Yeah.
food. So I'm narrowing down what I can eat fruit and vegetable wise.
Yeah.
And trying to keep that regimen. So yeah.
So with these lines, what we want to do is we want to make all food some sort of soup or stew. Yeah. Think chicken noodle soup. We want the protein because of the deficiency, but if, you know, animal protein is out of the question, we want to do things like mushrooms, lentils, things that get soft when cooked, but also staying away from raw fruits, vegetables, because they're hard to digest.
Right, and I crave protein.
Yeah, and that's part of, but we don't just want like a slab of chicken breast.
Right.
We want the chicken breast that has like the skin on it with the healthy fat, broken down in a soup over a couple hours, slow roasted brisket, like starting to get very hungry. And that's what we want. We want, like, think of somebody who's literally depleted and sick. We want to build them back up with the healthy fats that the body requires in order to kind of maintain a level of daily activity.
Yeah, because I feel like when sometimes you're craving it, not because I'm not craving McDonald's,
right?
That would be gross, but when I'm craving those things, it's usually an indication. So yeah,
exactly.
And I've been burning it both ends for 2 months, and now I'm just gonna eat my way to healthiness.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, the body isn't meant to be accusatory. The reflexes and the foot reading, although it's fun to pick out the chronic issues, it's not meant to be, you know, telling the client, oh my gosh, you need to change your life right now, otherwise you're going to die. Like that's a very aggressive stance. Can I grab some hot towels, please?
But I kind of feel like what you do is tell people kind of what they already know.
Exactly.
Just listen to their body.
Very true. Very true. I had a client come in and they said, you know, it's so funny that you say, another deficiency case, that I'm deficient because for the past couple weeks I've been craving like a bloody raw steak. Like that's all that I want, and that's like I've dreamt about this food. But she's vegetarian, and so she's like, I feel like I'm betraying my tribe. And so we talked about, you know, other ways that she could supplement what her body was asking for with things like blood red beets and really thick mushrooms, and, you know, understanding that she can get the meat feel and she can get the protein aspect without, you know, the actual ingestion of animal products. So it's about being creative and working with what the body and the client wants. But then if you don't feel comfortable, you know, talking about diet stuff with a client, then refer them to a dietitian. Like, it doesn't need to be you giving the advice. In fact, like, be careful of that. But at the same time, having a real conversation with a client to say, your body is correct, your body is always right. Understand that this craving is important. It is trying to tell you something. The body does want you to change in this way because it is needed.
And just for Allison, who asked on here, you can go back. We'll put this video on YouTube, so you can go back and rewatch the first half of it that you missed, because we're pretty much at the end of the routine. So, you know, we're not gonna have time to go back over all that information, but it's definitely there around like the 25-minute mark.
Yeah, and I think this is live routine number 6 that we've done, 5 or 6 or something like that. So there are plenty of other routine videos that you can check out right now.
When you go up the spine, this is what the guy from Switzerland was saying, you can actually feel the vertebrae.
Yes.
You can?
Yes.
Did you feel that when you were doing it, or were you doing more of it?
I mean, you always feel it. It's not something that you turn off. You're looking for the vertebra, but whether or not something was actually wrong. I mean, there's flaccidity, there's hypermobility in the spine in the lower, and then tension in the upper and kind of sacral root. But the mid spine is actually a little bit weak. When you feel, you feel. It's not something that you can say, no, I really didn't feel that. You feel something, but it's not a red flag. Yeah.
I have a question. These like fat pockets.
Yes. Physiolipomas, or something like that. Yes. They are my #1 marker for herniation in the lower body. Yes, but they're just fat deposits. Okay. So her pulse is actually jumping a little bit more than it was before, which is really interesting. So a little bit more of an energetic pulse, which is fabulous. But we're holding the solar plexus and adrenal just like we did at the beginning. And that is the routine.
Beautiful. So Scott, you mentioned earlier about fatigue. So there's a trigger point that you can work on for more energy?
There is no one point. Period. The body, and that is the misnomer of reflexology, is there's a point for this, a point for that. Even within reflex areas, there's not a single point. We feel for the individual reflex areas that we need to hold, but like the liver spans the entire distal arch, so there's no one liver point. Yeah, that's TCM. That's, you're thinking of a SUBO on a meridian, which is not what we're focused here. We're focused on the anatomical structures of the foot reflecting the anatomical structures of the body. So we're not talking about press the liver point to detox the liver. Everybody wants to frickin' detox. It doesn't work like that. Drinking water is a detox.
Correct.
You know, eating well is a detox. Lord, don't even get me started. This is a terrible thing to end our video on. No, just kidding. But there's no one point for energy. There's no one point for reproductive. There's no one point for digestion. If you want reflexology done, do the whole thing.
So body as a whole.
Yes.
Sam, that being said, between, like, for calming.
Yes.
So I'm talking to someone down from panic attack on the
Right.
phone. Long story. Between the adrenal and the solar plex reflex, which would you say would be more in that relation of calming?
Probably solar plexus.
Solar plexus because of the breathing aspect?
Yeah, the breathing aspect, the nerve aspect, because it would work quicker just from that theory perspective. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Awesome. And we're done.